You're about to fall asleep. But first, a quiet little secret buried deep inside the pyramids. One that isn't on the tour. One the guides never mention. Let it drift through your mind like desert wind. You don't need to hold on to it. Just let it settle. You're not here to study. You're here to listen, to float, to vanish gently into sleep with something ancient echoing in the background. Before we go further, take a moment to settle in. Dim the lights. Let the noise of the day fade into the background. Maybe put your phone on silent or set it just out of reach. This time is yours. And if you enjoy these quiet reflections on long-forgotten secrets and the hidden corners of ancient stone, consider subscribing. No pressure, only if it feels right. Maybe leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see where in the world these stories find their home. Some places stay awake while others sleep. The pyramids weren't solid. They weren't just massive piles of limestone stacked skyward. Inside, there are rooms, shafts, voids, and tunnels. Some were planned, some were mistakes, some are still mysteries. They aren't tourist attractions. Most aren't even documented in guidebooks. Some have no official names. And yet they're there, hidden in the geometry, lost in the stone. Khufu's Great Pyramid is the one people picture, the biggest, the oldest of the 7 wonders, still standing. Everyone knows the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber. But between those, there's a strange architectural gap, the Grand Gallery. It looks like a throat carved out of granite, rising steeply, too narrow to be ceremonial, too large to be ignored. It connects the known to the unknown. And branching off from that gallery are features most never hear about. Thin shafts, each just wide enough for a cat to crawl through, angled precisely with no clear destination. Some run dozens of meters and end in sealed stone doors with copper handles embedded into the rock. Behind some, nothing. Just air. Cold, undisturbed space. Silent for millennia. No one fully agrees on why these features exist. Engineers claim they're stress relievers, part of the structure. Archaeologists suggest ritual pathways for spirits. Esoteric thinkers whisper of secret messages encoded in stone, or of objects hidden for those clever enough or patient enough to find them. We've scanned some of the pyramid using muon detectors. The scans show empty pockets, but getting to them means cutting through history, and no one wants to take that risk. Not yet. Most of the inner workings were never meant for human eyes. The laborers who built them weren't given blueprints. They were handed instructions, sometimes carved into rock, sometimes shouted in dusty corridors. They carved, they hauled, they sealed doors from the inside. Some left, some didn't. We find bones sometimes, not royal, just forgotten. Picture that next time you see a pyramid. Not just a triangle in the desert, but a body of stone with chambers like lungs and shafts like arteries. A quiet machine made to hold silence, to preserve mystery, to dream beneath the sand. Some of its parts have never woken up. And maybe they're not supposed to. By the time the first stone was laid, the desert had already whispered to the workers. It told them what not to ask. Don't question the blueprints. Don't peer down the shafts. Don't touch the sealed copper doors. The pyramid was a job, but it was also something more. Something no one explained. Something that existed on the edge of belief and silence, wrapped in heat and centuries of stillness. They built from the outside in. First came the bulk. Tons of limestone hauled on wooden sleds greased with water, dragged across sand scorched by the noon sun. Then granite from far-off quarries, heavier, darker, harder. But as the outer shell took shape, the inner puzzle began. Not hallways, not proper rooms, no sweeping corridors or decorated ceilings, instead odd shapes. angled cuts, tight shafts that seemed to go nowhere or everywhere, dead ends, narrow climbs, hollow pockets. There was no symmetry, no pattern, just precision. Every tunnel had a reason, every void a decision, even if no one could say what that decision meant. Some shafts slope upward toward the stars. Orion's belt, Sirius, the pole star of the ancient skies, the sun at its highest point on the solstice. Astronomers say it's coincidence. Engineers call it overbuilt geometry. But the old priests just nodded and said the stars were watching. Maybe the shafts were messages. Maybe they were celestial ladders. Maybe they were escape routes. Not for people, but for souls, or things without names. Inside, the air is still. Not quiet, still. Dense and unmoving, like breath that's been waiting for too long. The deeper you go, the heavier it feels. The stones don't shift, but they seem to lean in. The silence presses against your chest. It doesn't feel haunted. Not exactly. It feels deliberate, like the structure itself is a choice, designed not just to hold a body, but to hold meaning, to contain something, to lock something away. Torches flicker strangely in the passages. The flame bends toward the walls, then suddenly stands straight. There are no soot marks on the ceilings, no burn stains, nothing to say anyone ever lit a fire inside, which means the ancient builders didn't use fire to see. They lit the insides another way, or they didn't light them at all. Maybe they didn't need to. There are chisel marks in places no human should have reached. Cut stone polished smooth in dead corners. Stone fitted so precisely, you can't slip a blade between the seams. And all of it worked in total darkness. If you believe the workers carved those by hand, you also have to believe they didn't fear the dark, that they trusted it, that they moved through it like it was part of the plan, that they worked inside something they didn't fully understand, and maybe weren't supposed to. No one was meant to live in the pyramid, but someone, once, stayed inside. Maybe only for a night, maybe longer. A forgotten priest? A lost worker? A wanderer who got in and couldn't find the way out? They left behind no tools, no bones, no carvings, just dust, just the faintest trace of footsteps, like the pyramid noticed, and then decided to forget. Picture that, a mindless monument with a memory, a place that breathes but never moves, built to be still, built to be closed, built to last longer than names, longer than maps, longer than truth. You can lie back now. Let that image settle. A place so ancient it doesn't need to be remembered. A place that still hums in silence, even when no one's listening. Especially when no one's listening. No one calls it a labyrinth, but it behaves like one. A monument that doesn't lead you anywhere, only deeper. Every passage seems to pull you inward, not toward a destination, but toward a sensation. The further you move through it, the more it feels like you're being absorbed, not guided. Step into the pyramid's internal map, and you'll find it doesn't follow logic. Left turns lead to sloping ceilings that squeeze your shoulders. Upward ramps narrow until you're crawling on elbows. Some spaces force you sideways. Others open up without warning into vertical drops or low cavities. Some rooms echo with perfect pitch. Some steal your breath like pressure chambers. Doors appear, perfectly rectangular, cut with mechanical precision. And behind them? Stone. Not passages, just solid, smooth walls designed to look like entrances, decoys, messages, warnings. It's not a maze you solve, it's a structure you surrender to, a puzzle that doesn't want to be finished. There are chambers so small they could only fit a single person lying down. Not enough room to sit up. No signs of offerings, no carvings, just the cold hush of disuse. Were they escape spaces? Meditation cells? Holding places for bodies, or for thoughts too dangerous to write down? Or were they symbolic, intentionally empty, like blank pages in a sacred text? Voids with meaning. Some even appear unfinished, yet the craftsmanship is flawless, as if their incompletion was part of the intention, an empty room that says more by what isn't there. The walls don't speak, but they echo in strange ways. Sounds behave like water inside. A whisper at the entrance might not be heard 3 steps away, but a shuffle of your feet can travel like thunder through stone. In one chamber, researchers once measured a standing wave, a hum that resonated at the same frequency as a human heart at rest. They called it an anomaly, but some of them never forgot the way it made them feel, like the pyramid had a pulse, like the space itself could feel your presence, matching your rhythm, syncing with your breath. Coincidence, some said. Others called it design. A few said nothing at all and stopped returning messages. Instruments taken inside sometimes returned faulty data, batteries drained without explanation, footage corrupted, voices recorded in rooms where no one spoke. All dismissed as noise. None explained. Not everything was built for the living. That much is clear. Some shafts open just long enough for a person to look through, but not enter. Others wind deep into the pyramid and then simply end. We've sent cameras, drones, scanning technology, and still the voids remain seen but unreachable, as if the structure itself is gatekeeping, as if it decides what can be found and what must stay quiet. Sometimes, even modern instruments stop working as soon as they cross a certain line, as if the air itself interferes. There are features that lead nowhere, but are carved with the same care as a royal tomb. Slabs that look like they were meant to move, but never did. Grooves along walls that don't correspond to any known function. Holes bored with precision that serve no purpose we can guess. If they were mistakes, they were consistent ones. If they were meaningful, that meaning remains sealed tight. And maybe that's the point. It's not for us. It never was. Stone doesn't rot. It doesn't rust. But it forgets in other ways. It hides. It seals. It waits. It outlasts. And when it wants to, it lets something slip. A draft, where there shouldn't be one. A pressure drop that tingles in the joints. A faint metallic scent rising from a crack you could have sworn wasn't there the last time you looked. Maybe it's just geology. Maybe it's memory. Some of the people who mapped these interiors never went back. They couldn't say why. Others went back again and again and began to describe the space like a living thing. Not haunted, not possessed, just present, watching, waiting, not for you, for something older, something not yet returned, or something that never left. It's possible to get turned around in the pyramid, not because it's complicated, but because it feels like it's changing behind you, like what you passed through has moved, rearranged, closed. That door was open before, that corner didn't exist. The space obeys geometry but resists certainty. The builders are long gone, but the blueprint might still be listening, or dreaming, or both. A design that doesn't sleep, a plan that didn't end with its construction. Maybe it never really began. Sleep easy tonight. Nothing's moving in there. Not anymore. Probably. They called it a tomb, but it was more than that. The word doesn't quite fit. Tombs are for endings. This place doesn't end. It folds in on itself, loops through time and shape, and settles into your thoughts like a splinter. It was never just a place to bury a body. It was a device, a container, a message. And the longer you think about it, the less certain you become that it was made for the dead at all. The granite blocks in the so-called King's Chamber weren't hauled there just for strength. They resonate, not with sound, but with something more subtle. Under the right conditions, Stillness, maybe, or the right breath. They hum. Not a noise you can hear with your ears, but something that registers in your bones. A low, slow pressure. A background pulse. Some people walk in and feel dizzy. Some feel soothed. One researcher said it felt like standing inside someone else's heartbeat. Another sat in silence and cried, unsure why. Above that chamber is a stack of empty cavities, flat spaces sealed one atop the other. Engineers call them relieving chambers, assuming they distribute weight. But others wonder, what if they're amplifiers, insulators? What if they were designed not for structure, but for function? Functions we can't yet understand. In one of them, faded graffiti scrawled in red ochre. Ancient names, marks, cryptic measurements, symbols that don't align with known dynasties, as if the builders were whispering something into the future, hoping it would be found, hoping it would be understood. Go lower, past the known chambers, past the guided paths, past the lighting and explanation. There's a shaft, rough, steep, and not part of the tour. It leads to what's known as the subterranean chamber. It's carved directly into bedrock, and it's crude compared to the others. The walls are jagged, the air is heavier, the floor is uneven. Some say it's unfinished. Others say it was left that way on purpose. There's a pit in the center, deep, square, and silent. Too deep for tools, too shallow for a tomb. No relics, no inscriptions, just empty, perfect absence. It's colder down there, not just from depth, but from something else. The temperature feels deliberate, engineered. You feel it in your breath. The sound doesn't echo the same way. It absorbs, as though the room swallows vibration. Visitors speak more softly without meaning to. Some report pressure in the chest. Others describe a presence, not malicious, not visible, just aware. Like the room is listening, like it hasn't forgotten what it was built to hold, even if we have. No one knows who designed these inner spaces. The names we have are theories. The drawings are reconstructions. No plans survive. No master key. There are no walls that say, here's what this does. Here's why we carved this void. Here's why we made it align with that star. There are only features, angles, dimensions, alignments, spaces that feel like questions left on purpose. And the pyramid isn't dead. It doesn't rest. It hums. It adjusts. It waits. For what, we can't say. The rituals are gone. The names have eroded. But the structure remains, too precise to be dismissed, too enduring to be ignored. It's possible we've mistaken its age for purpose, that it wasn't made for one king, or even for death at all. Maybe it was made for a time that hasn't come. The more time you spend thinking about it, the less it feels like a monument. The more it feels like a machine, or a mirror. Something that doesn't answer questions, but reflects them back at you. So let that settle in your mind. Let the granite cool your thoughts. Let the silence wrap around your breath. There's nothing chasing you, just something ancient, still listening in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for someone to ask the right question. There's a chamber beneath the chamber. Few talk about it. They call it the subterranean chamber, carved deep into the bedrock beneath the Great Pyramid. It's the lowest known space in the structure, and by far the strangest. Unlike the polished, symmetrical, and architecturally disciplined rooms above, this space feels like a raw wound in the stone. Rough, uneven, primitive even, as if someone was racing against time or carving under duress. The ceiling hangs low and slants like a cave. The walls are jagged, scratched, and unfinished, as though the workers lost interest halfway through. In the center, a rectangular pit drops down into shadow. It's deeper than a man's height, a gash in the floor that feels more like a grave than a construction site. Some suggest it was the beginning of a second chamber, Others say it was meant to be a well, or a trap, or something else entirely. But whatever it was meant for, it was never completed, or never meant to be. Theories swirl. Some say this chamber was the original burial site for the pharaoh, later abandoned when plans changed. Others believe it was a decoy, a trick designed to mislead tomb robbers, a place to trap the greedy or the curious. But that theory raises its own questions. Why make it so difficult to reach? Why hide it beneath everything else, under layers of stone and silence? To reach it, you must descend, far beneath the entrance level of the pyramid. You follow a passage so tight, so steep, you feel gravity shift. There are no steps, only a slanted shaft, just wide enough to crawl through. No reliefs on the walls, no hieroglyphs, no guidance. Just the sound of your breathing echoing off the stone, growing heavier as you go. The temperature drops. The air grows thicker, not only with dust, but with something harder to name. A pressure that builds in your ears and chest. A sense that you're not alone. Not in the living sense, but in the ancient one. The deeper you go, the older it feels. Not old like ruins, old like memory, like ritual, like the moment before a word is spoken. When you finally arrive, the space feels wrong. It doesn't match anything above. The chamber doesn't open up. It tightens. Its dimensions fight your sense of proportion. You expect it to be larger or more organized. Instead, it's intimate and uneven, like the inside of a forgotten thought. The floor slopes. The corners don't align. The walls close in the longer you stay. The air smells different here. Less like dust, more like time. Earthier, more alive in a way that doesn't feel comforting, like something in the stone has been waiting, coiled in silence. You don't feel fear exactly. You feel density, weight. Like this room is filled with something invisible and old, something that doesn't move but definitely notices. No artifacts have ever been found here. No tools, no offerings, no bones, not even a hint of paint or inscription. Just rock and space. The emptiness doesn't feel accidental. It feels constructed, intentionally blank, as if silence was the point, as if the absence of meaning is what gives the room its shape. They call it unfinished. That's the standard explanation, but that label feels too convenient. What if it was never meant to be finished? What if the chamber wasn't meant to hold a body or a treasure, but a question, a concept, an emptiness you have to feel to understand? Some suggest it's symbolic, a mirror to the hidden self, a shadow chamber beneath the ceremonial ones, meant not for the king's body, but for his unknowns, for the parts of him that never made it into legend. Others whisper it's older than the pyramid itself, that the builders found something already there and built around it, unsure how to explain it, or unwilling to try. Maybe it's not a room at all. Maybe it's an invitation, or a warning. And maybe, for now, it's better that it remains unanswered. They found red paint, faded, barely there, not a symbol, not art, just a line, drawn across a stone block deep inside the pyramid where no one was meant to see it. It wasn't carved or inlaid, just a smear, long, straight, precise, like a whisper in color. It looked like it had been drawn in a single stroke, without hesitation. Clean, confident, not accidental. Archaeologists argued over it. Some said it was a guide mark, a survey line, left by workers. Something to align stones, meant to be buried forever. Others said it was a remnant of something ritual, a boundary, a seal, the kind of mark you make when you want something to stay closed. Not a barrier, but a message. Do not open. Do not return. Do not disturb the balance inside. There were others like it, higher up in less accessible shafts, red lines, dots, streaks, some behind blocks that were never meant to be removed. Marks hidden under fitted stone, like signatures buried alive. And under those blocks, nothing, just space, measured and deliberate, not an accident, a decision, a whisper in architecture. If it was graffiti, it was careful. If it was instruction, no one ever wrote down the meaning. The pigment came from iron oxide, common, easy to find, used in cave paintings, used in tombs, used when something needs to last. But the brushwork? Controlled. The lines stopped exactly at the edges. Not jagged, not careless. Like someone was measuring not just space, but silence. As if the air had been divided and they were drawing the borders of stillness. Not decoration, declaration. Some of the marks were only visible under certain light. Others disappeared when touched, only to return hours later, faint but persistent. Cameras had trouble focusing on them. Flash made them vanish. They seemed to resist observation, like the paint knew it had lasted too long and didn't want to be seen anymore, or like the pyramid itself decided when to reveal the marks, like it had a memory of its own. No one talks about the red marks in the tour brochures. They don't photograph well. They don't sparkle. They don't explain anything. But they're there, tucked away where only engineers and scanners go, where flashlights flicker and breath fogs in the cold air, even though it's 100 degrees outside, where metal detectors glitch for no reason and no compass stays steady. It's the part of the pyramid that doesn't want to be friendly, that doesn't perform for the camera. One mark was found on the ceiling of a chamber with no official name. It curved slightly, just a little, as if it had been drawn by someone standing on the floor, then correcting their angle. That's the part that bothered people. It meant whoever made it had been there. After the chamber was sealed. It meant the seal wasn't the end. It meant someone went in after the closing, not to retrieve, but to mark, to annotate something that had already been finished. Another line intersected with a crack in the stone. Perfectly, as if the paint had been applied knowing the stone would fracture that way centuries later. A coincidence, maybe. Or a reminder that the builders thought in time, not years, not lifetimes. They measured the future in stillness and pressure. They didn't build for now. They built for forever. There are rumors, too, quiet ones, that some of the marks change position, not every year. Just enough to notice if you've been watching long enough. Just enough to unsettle the idea that the pyramid is frozen. What if it shifts? Not the stone, but the meaning. The marks are still there, unfaded, undisturbed, traced in a color that doesn't blink under age, drawn with a hand that didn't tremble. They wait, like everything else in the pyramid, waiting to be seen again, or waiting to be left alone. They don't care which, but they'll remember which you choose, and maybe so will the stone. When modern archaeologists first crawled into the lowest shafts of the pyramid, they didn't expect to find air, not fresh air, but there it was, cool, dry, unmoving, but somehow new, as if it hadn't been disturbed in thousands of years and still remembered what it was like to be outside. It smelled faintly of minerals and something else. Not decay, not dust, just age, sharpened to a point. The shaft they explored was narrow enough that grown men had to exhale just to slide through. Helmets had to be removed. Packs were left behind. The walls scraped skin raw. The ceiling dropped to a crawl space that felt too tight for breath. And then, halfway in, they found a pocket, a cavity, just large enough to turn around. Inside was a stone block, sealed on all sides. No carvings, no indication of purpose, just stone that didn't belong there. Too smooth, too perfect. It was the only thing in that shaft that felt finished. Some suggested it was a plug, meant to block a hidden corridor. Others believed it was a decoy, something to make intruders think they'd reached the end. A few thought it might be a counterweight, or part of a mechanism long since deactivated. But the most interesting theory came from someone who wasn't even supposed to be there. A translator tagging along for linguistic support said quietly, "Maybe it's a door." but not for us. The team moved on. No one tried to open it. They were running out of oxygen. The crawl back up took over 2 hours. Claustrophobia set in. Lights flickered. One man reported hearing a soft, low sound, like a breath drawn from behind the stone. They dismissed it. Weeks later, high-resolution scans showed the shaft continued behind the block, but not in a straight line. It bent, angled down, then narrowed again, then vanished into silence. No visible chamber, no definitive end, just depth. Some people say it's nothing, just an unfinished tunnel, a mistake in the blueprint, but others point to the angle, too sharp to be accidental, too purposeful to be abandoned, the kind of bend that suggests concealment, like someone didn't want this space found or opened. And the air that flows from that space? Still fresh, still dry, still coming from somewhere. Monitors placed near the opening register. Tiny fluctuations in pressure. Consistent, rhythmic, like breath. Some speculate about another room, others about a cavern, naturally formed and later sealed. But there's no geological record of such formations beneath the plateau. And yet, the airflow continues, steady, timed, like an exhale. They've considered drilling, briefly, then decided not to. Something about the readings felt off. The instruments worked fine above ground. Inside, they lagged. Data came in, scrambled. Audio, distorted. Batteries drained faster than expected. One camera failed after just 6 minutes inside the pocket. A small team proposed returning with a fiber optic probe. The proposal was delayed. Then, shelved. No reason given. That shaft remains untouched. The stone block undisturbed. The air behind it still leaks forward, steady and unchanging, as if whatever's behind it hasn't finished waiting. Somewhere we haven't reached. Somewhere maybe we shouldn't. There's a room they call the subterranean chamber. It's beneath everything, deeper than the base of the Great Pyramid carved straight into the bedrock. It's not finished, not polished, just rough stone, low ceilings, and a pit in the center, like someone began digging and never stopped. There are no tiles, no carvings, no offerings. It feels raw, as if it was never meant to be seen, only hidden. This chamber doesn't match the rest. It's not aligned with the corridors above. It's not symmetrical. It doesn't reflect the usual harmony the pyramid was built on. The air is colder down here, even when the desert outside is boiling. You feel it in your teeth. It hangs on your clothes. No one agrees on what it was for. Some say it was abandoned mid-construction. Others think it's older than the pyramid itself, as if the pyramid was built over it, around it, preserving it. There are no inscriptions on the walls, no furniture, just emptiness and echoes. And those echoes don't behave normally. When researchers speak, their voices bounce back, distorted, clipped, delayed. Like the room is mimicking them, but a second too slow. The acoustics aren't just strange, they're wrong. One team tried to record ambient sound inside. They left the recorder overnight. When they played it back, the tape was blank, except for one faint sound. Stone scraping on stone, like something shifting, like something adjusting itself. There's a groove along one wall, shallow, continuous, too precise to be random. It loops once, then stops. It's been measured, mapped, traced. Some think it's decorative. Some think it marks the edge of something buried. Others suspect it was part of a larger mechanism, now silent, now sealed. No one's tried digging there. Not seriously. Maybe because it's sacred. Maybe because it's too far down. Or maybe because everyone senses that the floor hasn't told its last secret yet. Some things you don't disturb. The deeper you go in the pyramid, the less it feels like architecture. The more it feels like memory in solid form, like walking into someone else's preserved thought, not built for people, built for something else, something weightless, something waiting. Even the dust here falls differently, less like particles, more like time shedding from the ceiling. And the pit in the center? It's not just a depression in the stone. It goes down, much further than it appears. Some say it's a failed burial shaft. Others say it was meant to be filled later, but never was. A few wonder if it was never supposed to be filled, if it was left open for a reason. When you stand near the edge and drop a pebble, it doesn't land with a sound. It disappears into silence. One old legend, half remembered, never officially cited, claims that the chamber wasn't dug by the builders. It was already there when they arrived. They found it, and instead of destroying it, they decided to build around it, protect it, hide it in plain sight. No proof, of course, just murmurs passed through generations of stoneworkers who heard things from their fathers' fathers. Whatever this chamber was, unfinished tomb, failed start, or foundation of something even older, it still breathes dust and silence. The groove still waits. The pit in the middle is still open, still waiting. There's a corridor beneath the pyramid that shouldn't be there. It's not listed on the diagrams. It's not on the tourist maps. And yet, the deeper scans, moon imaging, ground-penetrating radar, passive seismic data, picked up something long and narrow, running just below the base. A passage, low and thin, almost like a forgotten vein. No one's walked it in living memory. Maybe no one ever did. Maybe it wasn't meant for walking. Maybe it was only meant to exist. The passage doesn't connect to any known chamber. It doesn't aim toward the king's room or the gallery. It doesn't follow the logic of tomb design. It doesn't aim at the stars like the others. It curves slightly, subtly, like it was designed to avoid something or to circle around it. Its shape is too deliberate to be accidental, but too strange to be explained. It's too small to walk through upright. You'd have to crawl, shoulders brushing stone. Even then, some parts look tighter than a body can squeeze through. The floor appears smooth, too smooth, like it was polished intentionally, or worn down by something no one recorded. In one section of the scans, there's a dip, just a meter or two, but enough to change your posture. And past that, a hollow, a bubble inside the mass of limestone and granite, a pocket that shouldn't exist. No signs of structural support, no markings, no artifacts, just a clean, open space sealed under a mountain of weight. It shows no signs of collapse, no signs of purpose, but it's there. What is it for? No one can say. Theories collect like dust. Some believe it was an escape route for the builders, an emergency exit through which no one ever escaped. Others say it was ceremonial, a passage for the soul, not the body. A few believe it was built first, before anything else, and everything above it was aligned around this single, quiet shaft, like a thread running through a needle, the first line in a sacred design. There are more speculative theories, the kind you won't find in academic journals, the kind passed around at night between researchers who've seen too much, that the corridor was a test, not of engineering, but of something older, a tunnel made to measure courage, or patience, or silence, that the hollow beyond it holds something we're not ready to name, not a treasure, not a trap, just a truth buried too deep to carry into daylight. One fringe theory suggests that the hollow is a sound chamber, a perfectly balanced space that reacts to breath, vibration, thought, that the room isn't a container, but a receiver, a place designed to listen, to record something older than language. A few researchers brought audio equipment close to the area above it. They say it picked up a tone, a frequency too low to hear, but strong enough to register. A note that never stops. Whatever it is, it hasn't been opened. Not yet. The stone above it stays unbroken. No one has dared to drill. No one sent in a snake cam or a fiber optic lens. The air inside hasn't moved in thousands of years. It might be the last breath of an age we've forgotten, or the first breath of one we never understood. No tools have touched it. No lights have entered. It simply waits. And waiting, as the pyramid has taught us, is a kind of language all its own. It says, not yet. It says, not everything is yours to see. It says, I was built for more than memory. I was built to keep something still, and still, it waits. There's a chamber under the pyramid. It doesn't get much attention. No statues, no carvings, just rough stone, hacked unevenly into the bedrock, far below the polished symmetry above. They call it the subterranean chamber. But that name makes it sound like it has a purpose. It doesn't. Or if it does, no one's sure what it is, or why it was carved before anything else. The floor isn't flat. It dips like something melted it. There's a pit at the center, cut deep, square, and precise. No one knows why. No sarcophagus was found. No bones, just silence and a feeling most visitors can't describe. Some say it feels colder down there, but not in temperature, in atmosphere, as if the air itself forgets how to be warm, like the walls are holding something back, or holding something in. It was carved first. That's the strange part. Before the tunnels, before the galleries, before the grand halls lined in limestone. This underground void came first, directly into the rock beneath everything else. They tunneled down, opened this strange empty room, and then built the pyramid over it, like sealing something in, or leaving something behind, as if the entire pyramid was designed not to honor what was above, but to lock away what was below. There's no proof of its use, no hieroglyphs, no debris, no remnants of rituals. Just the pit, too small for a burial and too perfect to be accidental. Some archaeologists speculate it was abandoned, a false start. Others think it was symbolic, a grave for something not human, a marker for something older than language. One theory, rarely published, suggests the chamber wasn't for the dead at all, but for listening, that the pit could amplify sound from above, or resonate with vibrations from within the structure, as if the pyramid itself was built to hum, to speak, if you knew how to hear it. Perhaps it was tuned like an instrument, or like an ear, always open. There are older legends, whispered more than written, that say the pit wasn't made to hear the world, but to hear what lies beneath it. That the chamber was a receiver, a place to wait for something to return a signal. The pyramid built not as a tomb, but as a beacon or a lock. You can still walk down to it. There's a stairway cut into the descending passage, slippery, claustrophobic, unlit. The air thins the deeper you go, as if the space itself resists being disturbed. You'll feel the air change before you reach the bottom. Not worse, just older, like you're moving backward in time, step by step. Down there, the silence feels personal, not just a lack of noise, something quieter than silence, more like a pause, like the room is waiting for someone, or something. A silence that acknowledges your presence, not warmly, just knowingly. It's the lowest place in the pyramid, and yet somehow it feels closest to the beginning, closer than the foundation, closer than the sky above the capstone, as if everything above it is an echo, and this place, down in the dark, is the original sound. You won't stay long. Most people don't. They return up the narrow stairway faster than they came down, glancing behind them without knowing why. And when they reach the surface, they never quite describe what it felt like. Only that it was quiet. Too quiet. Like the pyramid was holding its breath. They never found the tools. No chisels, no hammers, no copper blades left behind in the deepest chambers. For a site that required tens of thousands of hours of labor, the pyramid keeps no record of the hands that shaped it. The artifacts we do find, broken pickheads, worn rope, pots of mortar, are always on the edges, never in the heart. As if the pyramid allowed the clutter of effort near its skin but refused it near the core. As if, at some point in the build, the structure became aware of its own boundaries and demanded silence within them. It's like the inner pyramid cleans up after itself, like it wants to be forgotten just as much as it wants to last forever. A contradiction carved in stone. A monument to presence built around absence. Archaeologists have theories, of course. Tools were removed, reused, lost to time, left in wood boxes that disintegrated, or buried beneath shifting sands. But even that doesn't explain the untouched chambers, sealed, tight, since antiquity. Some voids we've only recently scanned, empty pockets hidden in millions of tons of stone, should contain something. A tool, a lamp, dust, a spider's web. But instead, nothing. Not even insects. No rat skeletons. No bat guano. No signs of intrusion or decay. Just a perfect, patient silence, preserved across millennia like it was wrapped in linen and sealed with wax. The deeper you go, the cleaner it gets. Not in a swept way, in a sterilized way. Like something in there doesn't tolerate mess. Like the air inside those chambers rejects chaos, like it has memory or purpose. People talk about sacred geometry. What if the space is sacred not because of what it contains, but because of what it excludes? There's a corridor inside Khafra's pyramid that's perfectly smooth for over 100 feet, with no chisel marks, no grooves, just seamless stone. It's made from slabs too large to have been maneuvered by ancient means, yet there they are, locked in place, uncracked, unshifted. You can't even hear your footsteps. Some call it the quiet hall. Others call it the reset point. Walk through it, and you forget how far you've come. Some visitors have emerged from it uncertain how long they were inside. Others said it felt like time folded. A few refused to speak of it again. Maybe that was the idea. A built-in disorientation. A tool of erasure. Not to hide the past, but to hide the present from itself. There's a logic to the layout, but only if you're not human. Heights that strain the spine. Passages too small to walk, but too long to be decorative. Niches that don't fit statues. Grooves that don't match any known tool or container. Steps that don't fit a gate. Doorways that are too wide and ceilings that are too low. If it was designed for use, it wasn't for us. Not in our bodies. Not in this pace of time. You can feel it in the corners, in the angles that aren't quite right. Not wrong, just indifferent to human needs. As if the pyramid was meant to host a presence, not accommodate a visitor. The stones aren't marked. There are no guide signs. And yet, somehow they always lead you back to the beginning, if you make it that far. Some researchers say the pyramid is designed to test orientation, that it studies how long it takes for someone to lose track of direction or memory, that it keeps what you forget, that it's less a tomb and more a processor, one that digests attention and returns silence. A sensory filter that teaches nothing, but changes everything. Others claim the pyramid reorders you. Not just your position, but your thinking. Spend enough time inside, and your sense of space softens. Your sense of self, too. One researcher described it as being inside a closed eye, where everything's familiar but unreachable. Another called it the architecture of amnesia, a place where certainty goes to sleep. You don't need to believe any of that. You can chalk it all up to superstition, to flawed memory and reverence mistaken for design. You can say it's just a pile of rocks, cleverly arranged by hands we've underestimated. But if you ever find yourself standing in a stone hallway that absorbs every sound, just pause. Feel how the air thickens, how the walls feel closer than they look, how your breath seems to echo behind you, not ahead, how the silence inside isn't just an absence of sound, it's a pressure, a shape. Then ask yourself, who was this built for, really? And more importantly, what does it still remember? And if it ever chose to speak, would we even understand the language? There's a room that isn't supposed to exist, not listed in the diagrams, not visible in the scans, no coordinates, no map, just a story passed around among researchers, whispered during late-night digs and half-skeptical conferences, a rumor with no origin, a sentence left out of a report, a note scribbled in the margin of a classified file and later erased, the kind of thing people stop talking about, not because it's false, but because it's easier not to believe. They say it was found by accident, a maintenance crew checking ventilation systems along a sealed corridor in one of the less visited chambers. One of them leaned against a wall, not a door, not a panel, just a plain slab of stone, and it moved. Not a lot, just a soft shift under pressure, just enough to feel wrong, like a breath held too long. The kind of shift that makes your heart speed up before your brain even registers what happened. Behind it, a tunnel. Not carved like the others, rougher, uneven, almost hurried, as if someone had broken in, not built out. The tunnel sloped downward, slow and shallow, lined with scrape marks that didn't match any known tools. The crew followed it. They didn't mean to go far. But distance inside the pyramid doesn't feel like real distance. You walk 20 steps, and it feels like 50. You walk for 5 minutes, and somehow you're deeper than any blueprint allows. The air changes, your ears ring, time stretches. Footsteps feel muffled, and sound falls away like water slipping off smooth stone. The tunnel opened into a room, round, unlike anything else in the pyramid, no corners. No blocks, just curve, like being inside a bubble carved into the world. The walls weren't stone. They were lined with something else, something smooth, black, almost soft-looking, like fabric under tension, but when they touched it, it was colder than anything in the rest of the structure. Not air cold, deep cold, cold from within, the kind of cold that doesn't fade with time. One crew member said it made their fingers go numb instantly, like the temperature was pulling heat out of their body on purpose. No carvings, no symbols, nothing to tell you where you were, just the sensation of being observed. The crew took pictures, or tried to. The photos came out blank, not dark, not blurry, just blank. White void, as if the room refused to be captured. As if light behaved differently there, as if something interfered with memory itself. One member claimed the lens fogged even though the air was dry. Another swore the camera stopped working the second they stepped into the room, but started again the moment they left. One of the crew reported a smell, not dust or stone, but something metallic, sharp and clean. Another said they heard something humming, too low to hear, but strong enough to feel. The third said nothing. He just left the room and refused to speak for the rest of the shift. Later, he was found sitting outside the pyramid, staring into the sand. He wouldn't go back in. They left, or said they did. But afterward, each of them described the route differently. None of their versions matched. One thought they'd climbed stairs. One insisted it had been a ramp. The third said they crawled back. One of their watches ran 2 hours slow. Another said they lost track of time completely. The hallway behind them didn't look the same. Even the smell had changed. When the tunnel was resealed, no one marked it. There's no file, no report, just a shared understanding among a few, that the pyramid has layers it's not ready to share, that some rooms weren't built, they were hidden, waiting, preserved by intention or accident or something in between, and maybe, just maybe, not by us. And if you ever find yourself deep inside the Great Pyramid, farther than you meant to go, and you hear a faint breath behind the wall, it might be the stone settling. Or it might be the room, shifting ever so slightly, ready to be found again. And maybe this time, it doesn't want to be left alone. Some voids inside the pyramid aren't even listed on official maps. They weren't part of the original blueprints. Or if they were, those plans have never surfaced. They were discovered by accident, strange anomalies from muon detectors, faint inconsistencies in echo patterns, unexplained changes in air pressure, a low thump here, a flat response there. Behind the stone, something is missing, not just empty, absent, a silence so complete it feels chosen, as if space itself paused there, as if something was removed or never allowed in. One such space lies above the king's chamber, not the large granite slabs stacked above the ceiling. Those are documented. They're called relieving chambers, designed to redistribute weight so the roof doesn't collapse. That's not the mystery. The real mystery sits higher still, a void the size of a city bus, completely sealed, no tunnels, no crawl space, no evidence of access, ancient or modern. It's just there, balanced perfectly above the most sacred room in the pyramid, hidden since the reign of Khufu, waiting. Some believe it's a leftover, a structural fluke, an artifact of ancient engineering. Others think it's something else, something deliberate, a chamber meant for an object never placed, a ritual space never used, or something worse, a vault that was never meant to be opened because it already contains what it was built to protect, or to contain. We don't know what's inside. No one has ever been inside. The technology that revealed it, cosmic ray muon imaging, can only detect shapes and voids, not contents, just silhouettes and guesses, lightless scans through 5,000 tons of stone. The walls surrounding it are pristine, no seams, no cracks, no pressure shifts, no sound. It could be filled with air, with sand, with sealed-off silence, or with something that doesn't want to be named. There's a theory, it reads like fiction, but it's been published in academic journals, that the void isn't just architectural, it's conceptual, a precision balance point, a tuned absence, that its presence stabilizes the pyramid, not physically, but symbolically, that it acts like a counterweight, not to stone, but to story. If it were breached, it might not cause a collapse of structure, but of meaning, like pulling a pin from a machine that has been humming, undisturbed, for over 4,000 years. The hum might stop, or it might change pitch, and that might be the reason no one's gone in. Not fear, not superstition, just an instinct to leave it alone, to not wake something still functioning perfectly in its sleep. There are parts of the pyramid where even the boldest archaeologists pause. They joke, they speculate, but they don't drill, they don't cut. And yet, the void is there, documented, measured, unentered, for now. There's always the possibility that someone will grow impatient, that curiosity will outweigh caution, that one day a hand will reach in with tools and sensors and resolve, and then whatever was waiting might finally be found. Or worse, it might notice us first. They found it by accident, a stone block misaligned by less than a finger's width, not cracked, not loose, just off. It didn't match the rhythm of the surrounding stones, the careful geometry honed over centuries. Someone noticed. A junior technician with an eye for patterns. They brought in tools, measurements, theories. It was debated for days. Then, a week later, the block slid free with a soft scrape. Behind it, blackness, not a tunnel, a cavity, a void unlisted in the site's plans. A space no one had expected and no one could explain. No inscription marked its purpose, no artifacts inside. Just smooth walls, impossibly smooth, and a floor that tilted 3 degrees west, as if the room had been set to listen, to follow a sound, or a pull, or a gravity that wasn't entirely natural. The air was colder than the surrounding stone, sharper. It clung to skin and pulled at the breath. A different kind of silence. Not empty. Intentional. They sent in a probe. It failed within seconds. Motor seized, signal gone. Then they tried a drone. It floated inside, spun once in place, lights blinking erratically, and then stopped responding entirely. The signal was never recovered. When they pulled it back by the tether, the camera feed showed nothing but static. Not darkness, just pure gray noise. The kind of noise you get when something is disconnected not just from signal, but from meaning. Like the room refused to be seen. Engineers chalked it up to interference, metal density, magnetic anomalies, acoustic distortion. All the usual reasons. But the ones who stepped inside, only 2, and only briefly, said something else. It felt like the pyramid didn't want them there. Not aggressive, just aware. Like a room you walk into and realize someone already claimed. A presence with no weight, but full attention. One archaeologist described a low hum in his ears that faded the moment he stepped out. It wasn't sound. It was sensation. Another, a structural analyst, said the walls made her feel like she was being watched. Not from behind, but from within. Like the stone itself had eyes buried deep inside its grain. They both left quickly. Neither re-entered. They didn't argue for or against sealing the chamber. They just nodded when the others suggested it. In the 48 hours the chamber remained open, temperature sensors fluctuated without pattern. Tools lost calibration. Digital equipment malfunctioned, some beyond repair. A single geologist reported a headache that started the moment he looked inside and lasted until the chamber was sealed. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would make headlines, but enough. They sealed the entrance. Not for safety, not for preservation, just a feeling. Something unspoken but unanimous. The kind of consensus that doesn't need a meeting. The team moved on. Notes were taken, quietly. No papers were published. The chamber isn't listed in public records. It's absent from scans. Officially, it doesn't exist, but it's still there, waiting in the dark geometry of the pyramid. A blind spot with perfect angles. A question the stone doesn't want answered. It wasn't part of the blueprint, but the pyramid let it in. And maybe that means something. Sometimes it's the silence that gives it away. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of a silence that feels placed, constructed, held like breath. There's a chamber buried so deep within the pyramid that even its location is debated. Some say it was discovered once in the early 1900s, but no record of it was kept. Only a journal fragment mentioning an impossible room and a page torn clean from the logbook. Others claim it hasn't been reached yet, that it's still hidden behind false walls and interlocked counterweight slabs, beyond a series of angled corridors deliberately misaligned to confuse even the most accurate equipment. The only hint that something might be there is a quiet space in the data, a void where sound should bounce, but doesn't. As if the stone is listening and choosing not to answer. Scanning teams have passed over it again and again. Muon tomography, ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, all showing anomalies. They've detected cavities where none should be, disruptions in density where the rock should be uniform. But the pyramid doesn't yield to certainty. Every measurement is followed by doubt. Equipment malfunctions. Coordinates slip half a degree without reason. The deeper you go, the more the tools lie. The data doesn't match. The map redraws itself, and the silence grows thicker. The theory goes like this. The secret chamber isn't for treasure. It was never meant to be opened. It might not even be finished. It may have been carved to hold a sound, a vibration, an absence, something not physical, not meant to be seen or touched, only felt in the way pressure shifts before a storm. Or maybe it was sealed the moment it was complete, before even the workers knew what it would be used for, before the priest architects decided no one should ever enter again, and built the rest of the pyramid around it, like sealing a breath inside a bottle. Descriptions vary. Some say it's small and featureless, a cube of precision-cut limestone with no markings, no adornment, just perfect symmetry so exact that even the air inside would be balanced. Others believe it's tall and narrow, like a vertical slit in the bedrock. Accessible only from above. An opening for something to descend into. There's even a theory that it shifts shape based on observation, that the act of looking for it alters its geometry, that it is not fixed in form, but in purpose. And that purpose is not ours to understand. No one's been inside it. No camera. No probe. No drone. Not even sound has returned from the area. Maybe no one will be. Maybe that's the point. A room not meant to be entered. A space built not for presence, but for distance. There are ancient records, not from Egypt, but from elsewhere. Older texts, fragments written in obsidian script, preserved in cultures with no known connection to the Nile, that speak of chambers built to never be found, places that held silence like a substance, places not for the dead, but for what the dead leave behind, places that were not forgotten but deliberately unremembered. If the chamber exists, it is listening, not to us, but to something older, something it was designed to hear one day when the conditions are exactly right, a resonance, a tone, a whisper from below or above, or from within the stone itself, a signal. And if it doesn't exist, that might be even stranger, because the pyramid acts like it does, like it remembers building it, like it's protecting something that might never have been, as if the structure was built in response to a memory not yet formed, as if it's waiting for something to arrive or return or wake up, and the silence is part of the signal. There's no entrance, no markings, no invitation, but something's already inside, and it might not be alone. The pyramid has no clocks, but it knows time. It knows the weight of waiting. It knows how to measure centuries without counting. Inside, nothing rusts, but everything settles. Dust layers without breeze. Shadows hold their shape. The air doesn't change temperature quickly. It forgets what season it is. You could stand there for hours and feel like you hadn't moved at all, or like you'd moved too far. Ancient engineers didn't use calendars the way we do, but they built with time in mind. Every block laid was a mark against decay. Some chambers align with solstices and equinoxes. Light enters only twice a year. When it does, it travels across the wall like a fingertip. Slow, golden, exact. Then it disappears again, as if it never belonged. Other rooms never see light. No sun, no moon, no torch has ever flickered there. Not because no one reached them, but because no one was supposed to. There are scratches on the inside of one sealed wall, not random, linear, tally marks maybe, or notes. Someone was in there before it was closed. Someone was counting something. Minutes, days, lifetimes? The marks stop suddenly, as if whoever made them found what they were waiting for, or stopped needing to wait. In the Great Pyramid, there's a chamber that hums, not audibly, but with presence. It's not marked on official diagrams. It isn't part of the tour. It doesn't have a name. But every year, on the same date, it warms slightly. Instruments confirm it, just a fraction of a degree. Then it cools again. The heat doesn't come from sunlight. It doesn't come from outside. The pyramid isn't reacting to the world. It's remembering something. Maybe it always does. Whatever it is, it's not done keeping track. It just doesn't care if we understand what's being counted. There's a passage beneath the pyramid that doesn't align with any known structure. It runs too deep, too crooked, and ends at a space no one wants to talk about. Not because it's cursed or dangerous, but because it's wrong. Wrong in the way a crooked painting is wrong. Wrong in the way a stair that dips too low makes your knees forget how to walk. The workers who uncovered it during a sand clearance didn't report it right away. They thought it was just another crack in the earth, the kind that happens after millennia of shifting weight. But the crack had cut edges, smooth turns, corners that defied erosion. Someone made it, and no one admitted they had. It starts narrow, just enough room for one person to squeeze sideways. Then it widens suddenly, too suddenly, into a low chamber with no ceiling. Just open sky filtered through stone lattice. The air inside is colder than outside, but dry. The kind of dry that burns your nose and dries your tongue in seconds. The walls of this chamber are unmarked, but they shimmer faintly, like there's moisture behind the stone, or something else entirely. At night, the temperature in this spot drops lower than anywhere else on the site. During the day, it's the hottest, like the space doesn't recognize the sun until it's too late. In one corner sits a stone box, not a sarcophagus, smaller, no lid, empty, but built with the same attention as the king's chamber. Laser straight seams, inner walls perfectly smooth. Whatever it held, it wasn't meant to decay. It was meant to wait. No artifact was ever cataloged from this space. No excavation log, no survey notes. Just a brief mention in an internal memo that a structural anomaly beneath the southwest base requires reassessment. Then silence. The tunnel to that chamber was later blocked, officially for safety, unofficially because no one could explain what it was doing there. Sometimes pyramids bury things even they don't want found. Sometimes the silence inside the pyramid doesn't feel ancient. It feels current. Not something left behind, but something that arrived later and decided to stay. Something that slipped through a crack in time and settled in the stone like moisture seeps into cloth. There's a shaft, rarely discussed, near the base of the Great Pyramid. It's sealed now. But in the 1800s, a group of explorers found it by accident while inspecting weathering on the outer stones. The shaft wasn't marked. No alignment to stars, no ceremonial detail, just a narrow vertical drop carved in haste, crude compared to the rest, as if someone was in a hurry. One of them went down with a rope and lantern. The others waited. He shouted once. Then, nothing. The rope came back up lighter. There are no official records, just a secondhand letter written years later by one of the surviving team. He described the lantern flickering wildly as soon as it passed the lip of the shaft. A chill that rose, like steam. He didn't mention what the man said before he vanished, just that it wasn't a word, more like a sound, cut short. They resealed the shaft, claimed it was unstable. No one's gone back. At least, not publicly. But stories like that don't go away. They echo, quietly, whispered in tents near dig sites, shared between night guards, passed along by local guides who've stopped trying to convince anyone. They don't need you to believe. They just need you to listen. Because the deeper you go into the pyramid's body, the stranger time becomes. It folds around you. 1 second stretches, the next contracts. Sometimes it feels like you've stood still for hours. Other times, you blink and your torch has burned halfway down. Some claim the pyramid remembers every step, not in a conscious way, more like an impression left in wax. Walk far enough, stay quiet long enough, and the place might recognize you, might mistake you for someone it knew long ago, or something. Sleep gently now. The pyramid's still sealed. Mostly. They call it the relieving chamber. But what exactly it's relieving is still up for debate. Stacked directly above the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid are 5 flat-roofed spaces, one on top of the other, like giant stone pancakes. Each is sealed off, unreachable, without tearing through the pyramid itself. Their purpose, officially, is structural. They were meant to take pressure off the main chamber below. Without them, engineers say, the king's chamber would have collapsed under its own weight. But 5 layers? That's a lot of precaution. The highest chamber, the one closest to the tip of the pyramid, has a ceiling covered in red ochre markings, ancient graffiti, some call it. Crew names, tally marks, directions. Others think it might be more. Coordinates, instructions. A record of something done in secret, up where no one was meant to go again. When early explorers dynamited their way up, they expected nothing. But they found marks that hadn't been seen in thousands of years. No air moved in that space, no noise. The dust had settled and stayed settled. The ceiling markings were crisp, preserved by pure isolation. It felt more like discovering a sealed letter than a room. Some believe these upper chambers hide more. A 6th room, a narrow shaft, a vertical tunnel running even higher toward a chamber no scan has confirmed, but no one's ruled out either. The thing is, every time we think we've found the top, the pyramid suggests otherwise. A void here, an anomaly there. The structure keeps giving just enough to tease, never enough to answer. What's above the king's chamber may be nothing but stone and old air. Or it may be the final pocket of a forgotten design, built by hands that never explained themselves. Sleep easy. If there's anything up there, it's been waiting a long, long time. They say the pyramid doesn't echo anymore. Not because sound won't carry, but because there's nothing left to reflect, as if something swallowed the resonance, a hush too deep to disturb. Over time, the pyramid has settled. It's sunk slightly, not from weight, but from patience. Dust has packed into crevices. Sand has softened edges. The seams between stones, once hairline, have blurred, but the structure holds. It always holds. In recent years, some teams were allowed back in, armed with scanners, drones, thermal maps, high-resolution everything, and they found what others before them had found. The same tunnels, the same dead ends, the same breathless spaces, but also something else, something newer, or older. There's a chamber beneath the Queen's chamber. Not below it, but beneath it. A distinction the engineers didn't understand at first. It's offset, slightly twisted. The dimensions don't match anything else in the building. It's not symmetrical. It's not central. It doesn't follow the blueprint, or it follows a blueprint we don't have. No one's entered it. Not directly. Probes were sent. They malfunctioned. Images came back corrupted. Just a flicker of shadow, a glint of something not stone, a metallic edge, a smooth surface where there should be rubble, and then nothing. They tried again. Same result. One feed picked up a sound, not a hum, not a growl, something rhythmic, measured, like breathing. It didn't repeat, but it didn't stop either. It just faded. The official statement was sensor error, environmental interference, groundwater maybe. Everyone agreed to move on. But none of the researchers did. Not really. They talk about it, carefully. Not as a discovery, as a warning. Whatever that space is, whatever it was for, it doesn't want to be known. And maybe that's the point. Not all rooms are meant to be entered. Some were built to hold absence, and some to hold what comes after. The pyramid doesn't echo anymore. Not like it used to. Not like when explorers first climbed through its throat with torches and notebooks, expecting treasure and finding geometry. The air has gone dense, thicker. It doesn't carry sound the same way. What used to bounce now just stops. as if the pyramid has learned to keep secrets better. In recent years, researchers returned with better tools: LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, muon detectors, technology made to see what human eyes can't. They mapped chambers we can't reach. They saw voids larger than apartments, tucked between known rooms like hidden lungs. And still, no one knows what's inside them. No doors, no openings, just space sealed in stone. Some of those spaces aren't even level. They float, awkwardly angled, unreachable unless we cut through 4,000-year-old architecture, which no one wants to do, which maybe no one should. Every year someone brings it up. Every year they walk away from it. One of the newly detected voids lies just above the Grand Gallery. They call it the Big Void. No one knows what it's for. The official line is that it's structural, just leftover space, unimportant. But it's perfectly aligned, perfectly symmetrical, and perfectly empty. There are theories. Always theories. Some say it was a secret chamber for the high priest alone. Some say it held objects of ceremony, long since removed. Some say it was never meant to hold anything physical, that it was a container for something conceptual, an idea, a purpose, a ritual that's outlived its own meaning. What's more interesting is what we haven't detected. The instruments return anomalies. Not always the same. Sometimes the data stutters, as if something is interfering. Sometimes the results shift, depending on time of day. The air pressure, the phase of the moon. Scientists shrug. Some quietly wonder if they're looking at something that doesn't want to be seen. Inside that stone shell, we've built a second mystery. One made of readings, charts, probabilities, and invisible walls. And still, it waits. The pyramid doesn't offer explanations, it only offers space. Somewhere inside, a chamber may exist that has never been entered, never seen, never disturbed. It might hold nothing, or everything. And until someone opens it, or chooses not to, it will keep doing what it's done for over 4,000 years. Stay closed. Stay quiet. Stay intact. It's easy to think of the pyramids as silent, but silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of something that chooses not to speak. Inside the oldest stones, there are rooms no one stands in. Chambers that haven't held breath in thousands of years. They aren't haunted. They aren't sacred. They're just quiet. And that quiet has weight. The walls remember pressure. They remember touch. And even though they don't echo with voices, they carry something else. Imprint, maybe. A kind of architectural memory. One that doesn't record in words, but in arrangement, in alignment. Most visitors stand at the base and look up. That's natural. But few ever think to imagine what it's like to be inside. Not just physically, but temporally. Buried in time. Layers of meaning stacked like limestone. One for the builders, one for the dead, one for us. We think of rooms as destinations. In the pyramids, rooms are pauses, pockets in the stone meant for stillness. You're not supposed to arrive. You're supposed to stop, to not move. Some of them are even misaligned on purpose, off-center, off-axis, not errors, intentional asymmetry, built to throw off prediction, to interrupt movement. They say the pyramid was built to guide the soul of the king to the stars. Maybe, but which stars? And whose soul? Because when you study the shafts, the galleries, the blocks, so many of them seem scaled for no body we recognize, too narrow for shoulders, too short for humans. Some passages twist as if to accommodate something that moves differently, bends differently. That doesn't mean it wasn't human. It just means the priorities weren't what we expect. Whatever else the pyramid is, it was never just a tomb. It was a container for sound, for stillness, for geometry and intent and time. And maybe for other things too. Not everything that's buried is meant to be forgotten. Some things are buried to keep them from waking up. The pyramid doesn't rise. It settles into the sand, into memory, into silence. By now, most of what once surrounded it is gone. The scaffolds, the workshops, the tents of the stone haulers and bakers and rope binders, the heartbeat of a construction site that lasted decades and vanished without trace. But deep inside, the voids remain, still sealed, still unmapped. The passageways that haven't seen light in 4,000 years, maybe more. It's not just time that keeps them locked. It's hesitation. There are places archaeologists hesitate to touch, not because they believe in curses, but because they know how easy it is to ruin something just by looking at it the wrong way. A sealed chamber can collapse under a breath of air. A new scan can reveal something we're not ready to explain. Take the northern shaft, a narrow tunnel that climbs at a sharp angle from the Queen's chamber. In 2002, a robotic crawler was sent up it. It found a small limestone door with copper handles. Behind that, another stone. Then another. Behind that, unknown. They stopped there. Another shaft, higher in the pyramid, showed a thermal anomaly in 2015. A cold spot in an otherwise uniform wall. Could be a cavity. Could be a misreading. But in a structure built to precision, a cold patch is like a whisper. Something behind the wall doesn't want to be warm. And then there's the big void, discovered by particle detectors in 2017. 30 meters long, hidden above the Grand Gallery. Never opened, never entered, just there, floating inside the pyramid like an echo without a voice. It's big enough to fit an aircraft, and no one knows why it exists. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a secret. Maybe it was left as a message to the future, a chamber you can find but not reach, an idea preserved in stone, not a room, a pause. That's the part that gets forgotten. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was a sentence, a thought etched in megaliths, and part of that thought was this: not everything has to be seen. Some doors stay shut, not to hide what's inside, but to protect what's outside. So close your eyes. There are chambers in your mind too. Not everything needs unlocking. The pyramid doesn't cast a shadow in the way you expect. At noon, the stone barely flickers against the sand. It absorbs the light like it's storing it, holding it, waiting. There's a theory, quiet, unproven, that the pyramid isn't a tomb. Never was. That it's not a monument to death, but a container for something we don't have words for. Energy, memory, time, bent and folded like the limestone slabs. Something that only matters when everything else is still. Researchers have measured unexplained temperature shifts inside sealed chambers. Not dramatic, just enough to notice. Just enough to suggest that something is happening even when no one's there. Or especially when no one's there. The stone reacts differently to human presence than to emptiness, like it knows the difference. Some of the voids inside the pyramid are perfectly symmetrical. Others seem chaotic. But under certain frequencies, they reveal patterns, echoes, resonance, harmonics that stack on top of each other until the silence hums like a forgotten song. You don't hear it with your ears. You feel it in your chest, like an unfinished sentence you've known your whole life. No hieroglyphs, no instructions, no maps, just stone and space and the idea that it all means something. Something we use to understand, or feared enough not to ask. There are people who dream of the pyramid without ever visiting it. They describe the same rooms, the same angles, the same narrow crawl spaces that shouldn't exist. They talk about a sound, a single, low tone, like a distant horn that never stops. It's not frightening. It's just always there, even after they wake up. Maybe the pyramid remembers us the way we half remember it. Maybe it reaches out in small ways, in dreams, in pressure changes, in the feeling that something solid has shifted behind a wall you can't see. And maybe, when we finally learn how to listen, it won't say anything at all. It'll just open a little wider. Let a little more silence out. The last chamber isn't marked. It has no name, no inscription, no grand design, no tourist lights or velvet ropes. It wasn't made to be entered. And yet there it is. It's not a room, really. More like a pocket. A space the size of a child's bedroom, hidden above the grand gallery, floating in the stone. Discovered only recently by accident, using particle imaging. A void no one had seen in 4,500 years. A space untouched by human presence since the day it was sealed. No one knows what's inside. No path leads to it. No passage opens into it. The only way in would be to drill, and no one wants to carve into history just to satisfy curiosity. So it sits, unreached, unbothered. Some say it was meant to hold a relic. Others say it's structural. Some think it's symbolic. An empty space left intentionally, a spiritual placeholder for something immaterial. A breath, a pause, a blank page in stone. There's something comforting in that. The idea that even the ancients left room for the unknown. That in the heart of their greatest monument, they allowed for mystery. Or maybe they didn't allow it. Maybe they built around it. Maybe that void is older than the pyramid itself. Maybe the pyramid wasn't built to honor a king, but to contain a question. That's the last thing, really. The last passage. An unfinished answer in a monument that has outlived every name ever carved into its walls. Let that be enough for now. Sleep well.